So it's November 13th, 2022. And we're studying from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 4. And we're on text 2. Text 2, Chapter 4. Chapter 4 is entitled Vidura Approaches Maitreya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim sarasvatim vyasam tato jayamutirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should first offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayana, to Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Sarasvati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshva bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavat yutamashloke bhakti bhavati naishtike. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 4, Text 2. Tesham Maireya Doshena Vishamikrita Chetasam Nimlochati Ravao Asit Venunam Eva Mardanam. Tesham Maireya Doshena Vishamikrita Chetasam Nimlochati Rasavasid Venunam Iva Mardanam. Tesham Maireya Doshena Vishamikrita Chetasam Lochati Ravavasi Venunam Iva Mardanam. Tesham Maireya Doshena Vishamikrita Chetasam Nimlochati Ravavasi Venunam Iva Mardanam.
Tesham Maireya Doshena Vishamikrita Chetasam Nimlochati Ravavasi Venunam Iva Mardanam.
Tesham Maireya Doshena Vishamikrita Chetasam Nimlochati Ravavasi Venunam Iva Mardanam.
Would someone online like to recite the verse? It's text 2 of Chapter 4, Canto 3, Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, if not, then we'll go to the word for word meanings. Tesham. Of them. Maireya. Of intoxication. Doshena. by the faults. Vishamikrita, became unbalanced. Chetasam, of those of whom the minds. Nimlochati, sets. Raval, the sun. Asit, takes place. Venunam, of the bamboos. Eva, as. Mardanam, destruction. Translation: as by the friction of bamboos destruction takes place, so also at sunset, by the interaction of the faults of intoxication, all their minds became unbalanced and destruction took place. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. When there is need of fire in the forest by the will of the Supreme, it takes place due to friction among the bamboos. Similarly, the descendants of Yadu were all destroyed by the will of the Lord by the process of self-destruction. Just as there is no possibility of a fire occurring deep in the forest due to human effort, so also there was no power in the universe which could vanquish the descendants of Yadu who were protected by the Lord. The Lord wanted them to be so destroyed, and thus they obeyed his order as indicated by the word tad anugyata. Prabhupada's referring there to a word in the first text, and we read today the second text. So Prabhupada's going back to the first text in that last line of the purport. Om Gyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Anmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Darati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Ragnatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Banan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagat Pate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorange Radhe Vrindavaneshware Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpata Yubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Haschatya Desha Tarine. Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 3 Chapter 4 Text 2. Te Samareya Doshena Vishamikrita Chetasam Nimlochati Ravavasi Benunam Ivamardanam. As by the friction of bamboos destruction takes place, so also at sunset by the interaction of the faults of intoxication, all their minds became unbalanced and destruction took place. Well, yesterday, maybe many or everyone who's here now was here, Rasa Sindhu Prabhu led class and discussion and on the first text of this chapter. And he, I think he went through 21 reasons for the destruction of the disappearance of the Yadu dynasty, the Vrishnis and the Bhojas.
Was it 21?
He mentioned 21, so I trust you've all memorized them. So, okay, so I don't think I'm going to go too much into that. He did quite a thorough service there, very, very enlivening. At the same time, we can see here another reason, 22. Yeah, that Krishna co-created the destruction of the Yadu dynasty to send us the message to stay away from the booze.
Oh.
I mean, it's so straightforward, we could miss it. Okay. And I actually mean that seriously. So, okay. So, they're kshatriyas, and so they're allowed to, they drank some liquor, they drank some booze, and they got into this big brawl and they destroyed each other. Now we know it's pastime. So this is, and again, so it's actually, that happens a lot in the Vedas, in the Bhagavatam. So these Rishnis, these Bojas, the Yadus, they're great souls. These are great souls. So it's not like, let's criticize them, they got drunk and violent, It's not like, oh, let's criticize them. And we can see that sometimes Brahma gets bewildered, like badly bewildered. Sometimes Lord Shiva, Lord Indra, right? These are great souls. So it's not like, when we see they're apparently succumbing to faults in certain pastimes, it's not like my role is to criticize them. Rather, Srila Prabhupada, he talks about look, even such great souls, look how they got degraded and bewildered. So Prabhupada would say, so what to speak of us? So what to speak of us? Okay, that's like a main lesson. That's like a main lesson. Like how, if we want to protect our spiritual consciousness, how rigorous we need to be. I can think, oh no, I'm advanced now, I'm senior. But it was, even persons like the Yadus and Shiva and Brahma, they get bewildered. So that's where Prabhupada emphasizes, when these sorts of pastimes, how rigorous we need to be. If we want to steadily progress, in Krishna consciousness, to the extent that that's our goal. Yeah. So yeah, that's why it's like in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, Krishna uses the term regulative principles of freedom. Right. Oftentimes, once we hear about regulation, it can feel like, oh, that's stifling. That's stifling. But Krishna, so that's why it's not. When I say, so we should stay away from the booze, the essence there coming from Srila Prabhupada, right? And the essence there, it's not about should not. It's not about right, wrong, good, bad. And I had I think it was just two days ago, I had a brief conversation with someone in the community. She's a graduate of all the Safatobe programs, foundational, advanced, Safatobe 3, coach training, life mastery program. And she was saying to me her all-time favorite process. She was saying her all-time favorite process. Suspense.
Yeah.
Her all-time favorite process is agreements in the foundational seminar. And she said, because she's so much, and she takes into her life, she's a teacher, and she takes it in teaching her students, her pupils. Mm-hmm. She said that's her all-time favorite, because where it comes from, it's not about you should keep your promises, you should always, we should. She said simply, it's simply look at my consciousness, look at my experience, look at my experience when I keep my agreements and when others do. My experience of myself, my experience of relationships, my experience of life, my experience of integrity, my experience of being aligned, and look at my experience when I don't keep my agreements. He said, that's all that process is. It's take a look and be with your experience honestly. And so she, So that's the principle here, like with these like regulative principles that okay, so the tendency will be when we're not following some of these regulative principles, that there's going to be some covering effect of the consciousness. It could be subtle, it could be slight. It could be a fratricidal war that kills millions. Okay, like it can take, different degrees of effect, But it's about, so that's why, now, first of all, see, it's true, like for Kshatriyas, like according to certain circumstances, they can hunt and eat meat, and according to and they can, in certain occasions, drink the soma ras and have this liquor made of rice. Okay, and in certain circumstances, they can gamble. Okay, so they can do this. And even, this was about 30 years ago. It was very shortly after I returned to the United States from the Middle East, from Israel. And I was with Krishna Fest. Krishna Fest is quite a strict program. And in Israel, it was quite a strict program too. But we had someone visiting, and he was, he was saying that he identified his Dharma as Kshatriya Dharma. And so he was saying, like, so it's kind of like a violation of his principles if he doesn't have sex with a lot of women. And if he doesn't drink a beer here and there like that. So, okay. So we can see, this is true. I'm not making that up. That's how I was like, that's interesting. No, he was a senior devotee, so who was I to say anything? Yeah, no, he wasn't a bhakti. He was probably right. So that's okay. That's one. Well, that's one place where the current link to the Parampara principle comes in very alive, because we can hear about so many principles, and this Acharya said this, and the Kshatriyas in the forest 5,000 years ago, they did it this way. Okay. And that's why, for us, to the extent that we choose to make our life goal to advance in true spiritual consciousness, then we have our current link to the Parampara, Srila Prabhupada saying, okay, here's agreements. And to the extent that you make and keep these agreements, then you're going to see that you can see your experience. And you can see your experience is that, you're coming out of bewilderment, you're coming out of mental torment, and you're more and more realizing the joy of the soul. These agreements to the regulative principles, these agreements to chant names of God, names of Krishna a minimum amount of times per day. Just like, okay, here's regulative principles coming from our realized Acharya Srila Prabhupada. And then, as Krishna says, Krishna emphasizes in Bhagavad Gita, Vimini Yeshad Asheshana Yate Chasti Tataku. Krishna speaks the whole Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, and at the end he says, now Arjuna, do as you wish to do. Right? Once there's force or coercion, then there's no love. And the essence of this bhakti yoga is to serve voluntarily. Prabhupada emphasizes to serve voluntarily. And so we have okay, here's these principles, here's these regulative principles of freedom, and we get to choose how rigorously to follow them or how much to disregard them, and notice our experience. And so, sure, for different personalities at different times, there's their regular principle might allow some booze, some hunting, meeting, but we can notice, like here and in many other places, that sure. So it's one thing, they can do that. The Kshatriyas can do that, and we can notice that, and when they do it, it's not like a gross violation. It does, but still, it doesn't go well.
It usually doesn't.
Yeah, hard to think of any time it does. It doesn't go well here, right? It didn't go so well. They killed each other, right? No, really. It's things like, well, they're kshatriyas, they're allowed to drink the liquor made of rice. Didn't go well. So right here, I'm sitting at Mother Malini's ashram, right? So then right here to my right, there's this picture of, so gambling. No, the kshatriyas, they're allowed to gamble, so it's not a violation for them. Didn't go well. Didn't go well. Of course, ultimately everything goes well because Krishna is in charge, you know, like it went
well for the Kauravas.
in a temporary sense.
In a temporary.
Time.
Yeah, in a temporary sense. So
You're right.
the whole Bhagavatam, Maharaj Parikshit, he was out hunting, right? And then he got cursed. He lost control of his anger. Maharaj Pandu, the father of the Pandavas, he was out hunting, and he ended up mistakenly killing a Brahmin, and all sorts of stories. So it doesn't go well. So that's like another message, like a 20-second reason, you know, to get like, and it's not about good, bad, right, wrong. It's just like, yeah, if we violate these principles, then like, you know, we, as Saint Augustine said, we're not punished by sin. We're not punished for sin. We're punished by sin. We like when I'm violating the principles of bhakti as given by our current link to the Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada, I practically immediately feel alienated myself. I feel that punishment, not in the sense of like, just like you're doomed to hell, but in the sense of like, there's a message here. There's a message here. A message here encouraging me to like, yeah, to be more dedicated and rigorous, to align with principles of goodness and principles of true transcendence, again, that we get from Srila Prabhupada, our direct link to Krishna's disciplic succession. So, all right. Yes, so again, the tone is not about fire and brimstone. The tone is consciousness of experience. What experience of life do I want? And to the extent that I want true peace, enthusiasm, inspiration, joy, happiness, then here's some principles that I can agree to do, like morning program and studying Bhagavatam together, chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra Japa. Here's some things I can stay away from, like these regulative principles of freedom. And I don't have much realization. I have enough experience the past 43 years or so to know that, yeah, whether I'm in the process or not, I always, without fail, get confirmation that the process is valid. When I'm not in the process, because in the process of Bhagavad Gita says, if you're not in the process, yeah, you're gonna experience that shame, that regret, that alienation from self, that the depression, that anxiety. So like when I deviate from the process, yep, there it is, confirmation of the experiment. And when I'm in the process, I experience that. Yeah. At night, wow, yeah, that was a fulfilling day. I mean, relative to my standards, like even on a good day for me, my standards aren't, particularly high, but like, yeah, relative, yeah, I'm feeling connected, fulfilled, inspired, enthused, secure, like that. So it's that's science. Science means there's a hypothesis, and then there's an experiment. Experiment means an experience. And so to the extent that we choose to follow, then our whole existence enters into pastime, right? This disappearance of the Yadu dynasty, it's pastime. This term is used, and pastime means we're not forced by the modes of nature, and that it's so this process is here. This Bhagavatam is here. We're reading, each day, morning program. I know for myself, probably my greatest nectar in life, day to day, is reading Srimad Bhagavatam, reading Srila Prabhupada's books. These recent years, I'm on Srimad Bhagavatam in my personal reading. Later today, we have a Chaitanya Charitamrita study group. It's been going on for about 6 years. This is, for me personally, it's probably my greatest nectar of connecting with transcendental, some sparks of transcendental consciousness. And so then we connect with that pastime mood, pastime, like that like, and then there's nothing forced by nothing forced by fear and the modes of rajas and tamas, tada rajas tamo bhavo kamalabadayasche chaitartir navidam stikta sattve prasidati. That thus in the mode of goodness, then the effects of greed, lust, material, anger, they all dissipate, and one becomes happy in the mode of goodness as a foundation for transcendence. It's so that's what Sri Krishna, Srila Prabhupada, all the great souls in Srimad Bhagavatam, there's no force. Again, once there's force, then there's no love, and bhakti is based on simple loving devotion. But they're urging us, discipline yourself so that each day we're more and more in the true path. We're doing what the soul does in enlightenment, and that's certain. We do in this body what the soul does in enlightenment. That's the program Prabhupada gave us. We serve Krishna. Then we experience liberation from the disturbances of the material context in this very body. So that's all. It's all based on giving ourselves to our eternal activity. Eternal, again, sometimes we make this distinction. Eternal doesn't essentially mean for a really, really, really long time. Eternal means outside of time, right? These pastimes of Krishna, each word of Bhagavatam, it means it's not affected by material conceptions of past, present, future. There's a verse in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Nasato vijate bhavo, na bhavo vijate sata ubayrabi drishton tas tvanyos tatvadarshi. That those who are seers of the truth have concluded that of the non-existent, there's no endurance, and of the existent, there's no cessation. This they have concluded by studying the nature of both. Right. That's text 16 in chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita. It's in that set of 20 verses where Krishna hammers home, beautifully, gently hammers home the point: we're not this body. And he's imploring us, he's imploring Arjuna. Of course, it's a real historical dialogue, and Arjuna is representing us. He's imploring Arjuna, to get this fundamental point, and to focus on that which has no cessation. So this is, I'll just open the door to that text there. Nasato vijate bhavo, na bhavo vijate sata. So you got the word sat and asat. So sat means enduringly existent, asat means doesn't exist. So it's not, so the whole material body, in a sense, that's asat, material body, material universe. Because the way Krishna is using the term, asat means that which doesn't exist in past, present, and future. Okay, because even, again, if we deconstruct it, we can say, well, the body is temporary. It's going to die at the time of death. That might be tomorrow. It could be in 60 years, whatever. And the soul is eternal. That's good. It's true. Same time, we can because as we sometimes like to say, following Srila Prabhupada, right? We're all barring all the examples in philosophy from Srila Prabhupada, of course, that actually the body's already dead, right? The body's already dead. It's made of dead matter. It appears alive, just like a car is made of dead stuff, plastic, metal, rubber.
but it appears alive when the driver's inside. So because the soul's inside, the body appears alive. And the body itself, yeah, there's no endurance. Yeah, because in 60 years it'll die. Yeah, but not just that. In 6 nanoseconds, in 1 second, it's gone, right? Like we're not in the same body now we were in when this class began 20 minutes ago, okay? But that's the illusion is, no, it's the same body. That's, so like the seers of the truth, Srila Prabhupada, Maharaj Pariksha, Shukadeva, they're wanting us to see the ephemeral nature that it actually even yeah, right, we say like, because the body, the atoms, just like let's say if we go to the woods, we go to the forest and we sit by a stream and we watch the stream, and then we go, okay, then the next day, I go to the same place and I watch. Oh, you saw the same stream. Yep, saw the same stream. Right, but that's an illusion, right? Because I sat at the same place, but there's not one molecule of water that was there the day before. Or even if I sit at the same stream and a few seconds later, okay? So it's very ephemeral. It's very ephemeral. And so we're encouraged to okay, what is that which is sat? So in one sense, the universe, it's both, the material universe is both sat, existent, and asat, not existent. It's not existent because the forms are illusory, and my conception of them, I am this body, and this is my body. Okay, that's illusion, and the forms themselves we just deconstructed in terms of science. Even it said like andantarasta paramanu chayantarastam, that there's the andantarasta paramanu. The paramanu means atom. But actually means like the super soul, an expansion of Krishna, exists in the heart of all living entities and in every atom. But even that, if we look at in terms of modern science, because paramanu actually means the fundamental unit of matter. So maybe 120 years ago, it was considered the fundamental unit of matter is the atom. Okay, but now there's like 50, 60, 100 subatomic particles. There's quarks and strangeness and charm and hadrons, right? Yeah. The neutron, the proton. So does that mean, right? So that's why like the Sanskrit actually gets more fundamental, because the Sanskrit, it's a language for philosophy. Okay, but like what's the fundamental unit of matter? You know, now they might say it's something different than we were growing up in school. But, well, the atom, no, electron, no, now it's the quark or something like that. But, so it's like, so ultimately, it's all energy. It's all Krishna's energy. Okay, and he has different varieties of energy. So the universe is real in the sense it's real energy. It's real energy. But the way we perceive it is illusory. That's why it's both sat and asat. So Krishna says, Aham sarvasya prabhavo matasaram pravartate iti matva bhajante man buddha bhava samanvita. Krishna says, I'm the source of all material and spiritual energies. And those who get that, those who realize that, naturally they serve me with love and devotion. Iti matva bhajante man buddha bhava, with heart. They serve me with heart. That's the essence of bhakti. We could say bhakti is so simple. Krishna consciousness is so simple that a simple innocent child gets it. And simultaneously, the philosophy of Krishna consciousness is so complex that the greatest material brain, the greatest material professor will just be completely bewildered simultaneously. Prabhupada said, Krishna conscious, simple for the simple, complicated for the crooked. So, yeah, so, okay, so it's all Krishna's energy. It's all Krishna's energy. And then what the guidance we're getting from Srila Prabhupada, and like the guidance we're getting is how to relate to the different energies of Krishna. And of course, from Krishna's point of view, there's really not a distinction, material energy or spiritual energy, right? But from our point of view, that's the point. It's important to make distinctions. So it's all Krishna's energy. And we're getting guidance how to relate to the different energies such that our heart becomes cleaner and cleaner and pure and pure. And without purity, what chance is there of happiness? Zero. Okay. So, example we often use, right? Like what is, profound question. What is the vodka in the vodka bottle? It's Krishna's energy. What else could it be? And that's very relevant here because we're talking about vodka here, or we're talking about liquor made of rice, right? It really is the best.
Yeah. I think sake.
Sake, yeah.
Sake is a real made of rice.
The Japanese, right? Yeah, right. So we really are talking about that. So we can say that the Yadus, the Bojas and the Vishnus, we can say they didn't violate a negative principle, but it didn't go well, right? Because how?
Krishna's energy.
Yeah, because they related to Krishna's energy in such a way where they got violent with people who were dear to them. Like this is a real tragedy, within that context. I mean, it's a higher pastime, right? So that's it. That we're getting guidance to whatever extent we choose to follow it. And Krishna emphasizes, give 100%, but if you give 1%, okay, that's great. That's commendable. Whatever we do in our path, that's for our timeless benefit. But and so the more we give ourselves to the process, the more we enter in to pastime. The more the process means we're doing what the soul does in eternity. That's what it means. The devotee is deathless. It's described by Bilvamangala Thakur, Muktira Swayam Kulitanjali Sevate Sman, that liberation from material desires which torment us so much, desires for profit, adoration, distinction, desires for material sense gratification, desire for compliments, popularity, like that. What's that? All the strategies for survival. Yeah, right. Yeah, I'll come from that. So liberation, what a relief. And Bilvamangala Thakur says he says that now that I've taken to devotional service to Mukunda, Sri Krishna, liberation is at my doorstep, just asking to serve me, and not chasing liberation. So like a devotee realizes liberation, but it's not important. What's important for a devotee is how can I please Krishna? And in that mentality, liberation is naturally there. Actually, yesterday I responded to someone in the Chaitanya Charitamrita course, and just last night, maybe it was Yogeshwar Prabhu. I used a metaphor of like, let's say someone, we'll call him Dhira Govinda Das, is biting into a delectable sweet. Okay, all right. So, okay, and so my absorption is the taste. Okay, flavor, taste. Now, you might say, oh, the color of that sweet is light brown. It's a nice light brown. But as I'm in the middle of the flavor and taste, what's that?
It's a burfi.
It might be a burfi. Yeah. So now, so the color. So you might say, oh, the color of the sweet is light brown. And I'm like, okay, I realize the color is light brown, and you might describe the nuances of the color. But I'm like in the middle of like the flavor, the taste. That's the thing. That's the thing. Okay. And so I'm like, it's not that I don't have realization that the Burfi is light brown. It's just like, that's not really my focus. It's not where I'm putting my consciousness. Stay with me on this one. Okay, so similarly for a devotee like Bilva Mangala Thakur, he's saying, he's saying the liberation's at my doorstep. So the residents of Goloka Vrindavan and Vaikuntha, they have realization of the one, they have realization of the Brahman, but it's kind of like their focus is their rasa with Krishna. That's their focus. And even like if you were to keep talking about the light brown color, like this is a distraction. I'm trying to enjoy the taste, the flavor. Okay. So similarly, for a devotee, just like even talk about Brahmagyoti, it's kind of a distraction from enjoying serving Srila Prabhupada, serving Krishna. So Prabhupada emphasizes, it's such a wonderful verse from the second canto, Muktir Vanyata Rupam Svopena Vivyastiti. And it's just that real liberation is serving the form of Krishna and increasingly revealing our eternal spiritual form. And in that verse, the word rupa form appears 2 times. And so we do that, and then as we approach leaving the body, it's then what happens when the body dies, when we leave the body? Then I'll do the same thing I've been doing, to the extent that I practiced serving Krishna in this body under the guidance of his pure devotee. Yam yam vapi sman vavam tyajatante klevaram tam tam eveti konte sadatad bhava bhavita. Whatever state of being one is absorbed in upon leaving the body, then that state will attain. So that's the devotional consciousness that we're encouraged. Tatvasa dharmam bhajatam shavanam bhujam harer bhajana pakuta patetatoyadi yachakvava bhajama buddha mushikim kovarta arta bhajatam svadharmata. Narada Muni asks a rhetorical question. What loss is there to give yourself to bhakti? What loss is there? And if we give ourselves to something other than bhakti, some other achievement that is part of the world of asat, that which will not continue on and even now is illusory, then Narada Muni asks Vyasadeva rhetorically, what gain is there? Right? As it says in the Bible, what good is it if we gain the world and lose our soul? So to gain our soul, to recover our soul means that we rejuvenate the soul's original activity, and that's bhakti, devotional service to God, to Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. Okay, so this verse again, this is Canto 3, Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 4, text 2. Te samayreya doshena vishamikrita chetasam imlochati rabhavasid Benunam eva mardanam. As by the friction of bamboos destruction takes place, so also at sunset by the interaction of the faults of intoxication, all their minds became unbalanced and destruction took place. And aspects like this analogy of the friction of bamboos, my understanding is the idea is you rub sticks together to make fire, and bamboos are especially amenable to that. So when the winds are high, bamboos rub against each other in the hole. So then, so there's personal will, and then there's also like this kind of higher level meta plan, like that. Okay. So thanks for your attention. Thanks for hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. I welcome at this time any questions or comments. There's no one with their hand up online at this time.
You said, you don't need to tell me,
Okay.
but you said something about asat.
Yeah.
Asat means non-eternal, non-existent.
Yeah.
and you said something about doesn't exist in past, present, and future.
Right.
And I got lost there a little
Okay.
bit because I got lost in reasoning. I'm sensing there's something there that like Assat is no past, present, and future. Usually that's how it's described.
Yeah.
So and I know there's something, but
Okay.
I didn't capture it.
Okay. Mother Malini is asking about my use of asat related to that verse, chapter 2, text 16 of Bhagavad Gita, nas sato bhava, vijite bhavo, na bhavo vijite satam. So, because, the Mayavadis or impersonalists, you'll say it's all illusion. The whole universe is false. It's not real. And they'll say it's asat. Only Brahman, Jagan Mitya, Brahma Satyam, Jagan Mityam. Only Brahman is Satyam, is real, and the universe is false. Okay, it's all an illusion. So, Bhagavad Gita, in the line Vaishnavism, we're not aligned with that. It's partially true. It's partially true. So the way we understand it in Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita is that, sure, there is an aspect of illusion, like the forms are illusion and the way we perceive it is illusion. But when we have like the word asat, it doesn't mean that it's completely false and untrue, like the Mayavadis will say. It doesn't mean that. But it means that, yes, it has its real existence. Because it's an energy of Krishna, and Krishna is real, God is real, and God's energies are real. So it is real. Even though it's asat, it's asat because the different forms, because they don't exist in past, present, and future. But it's at the same time, you could say it's sat because the energy is real. The energy is real, but yeah.
It's asat because it doesn't exist in past, present, and future.
Whereas spirit, the existence of spirit, whether the spirit soul or Krishna, the supreme spirit, the existence of it's eternal.
I thought it the other way.
Okay.
So when you say it's not existing in past, present, and future, in a sense, asat is only existing in past, present, and future.
Yeah.
Also.
Yeah.
You understand?
Right.
Like that's
within material time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the past, present, and future usually is associated with asat.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is that asat, like sat, is ever existing in past, present, and future. So asat doesn't exist in past, present, and future. I see it's kind of a turnaround.
Okay. Yeah. So sat, that which is sat, or what Krishna's, that which is existence and has no cessation. Its existence is not dependent on material past, present, and future.
Yeah.
Its existence is not dependent on that. Whereas that which is asat, like whether it's this body or this house or this car, that which is asat, or this atom or this electron,
it's depending on
its existence depends on past, present, and future. That's why it's asat. And at the same time, the energy itself is sat, because the energy does exist eternally. Prakriti is, it's an eternal energy.
Yeah. Yeah, I just don't trust. I get it now, what you did with that.
Thank you. I saw Kim's hands up and Gajendra. Kim, did you have a comment or question?
I guess a comment.
Okay.
I was just going to say, I love that quote you said by Albert Hubbard. We are punished by our sins, not for them. And
Yeah.
I'd never heard that before, and it's really good. It makes me think he was a devotee, because if he was Christian, you know, by being brought up Christian, I really didn't get that sense ever from them. And then that leads to so much confusion to me. Like there's so many things that I think sends people spiraling, like, well, you know, why am I suffering like this, you know? So I just think that to go back to that simple, you know, quote is just really, I'm going to try to remember it and write it down. And then it also brings me back. I think you said Prabhupada said, the philosophy is simple for the simple. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah. And that is, you know, again, to me, like that's the thing with Krishna consciousness. Like a lot of times I feel once I learned the philosophy, I felt like a lot of the questions were just gone. Okay, well, this all starts to really make sense. You know, sometimes you don't like it, that the laws of karma and the lessons here, but they make sense, you know? And then it goes back to me to that just wonderful quote that you just said. So anyway, that's all. That was my comments.
Thanks for that, Kim. Yeah, I heard that. Thank you. I heard that quote attributed to Saint Augustine. And, you know, sometimes on internet we don't. I really like when I actually read books and then I get quotes, then I know the source. But sometimes from internet. So yeah. So I'm glad that that's powerful. That's impactful for you. Yeah, we're not punished for sin, we're punished by sin, because the idea of punish for sin, then it becomes like this, you know, like the conventional religion and out of fear, and then or you'll be punished. But it's about experience, and if we act in ways that are alienating for the self, we have an experience that's like, this is punishing, and we act in ways, think in ways, speak in ways that are aligned with higher principles, aligned with devotion, then we have an experience where this is so fulfilling and joyful. Thanks for sharing, Kim. Gajendra Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank
Great.
you for many interesting words. And I would like to express a few thoughts that came up when you were talking about a devotee who is expressing, well, he sort of considered himself Kshatriya, and therefore he wants to have sex with as many women, or maybe even felt an obligation, or have his beer. And I very quickly had this experience of feeling both a strange mixture of feeling horrified and amused. But what I would want to comment on is kind of related to the modes of nature. And when we look at these different sort of varnas, so to speak, or people, where they're situated within the, you know, what modes of nature may predominate their condition. So there, you talked about how, well, okay, there are certain allowances for a kshatriya, you know, to maybe be able to drink like that. And you also talked about how it doesn't mean that there's not some result that might not be, you know, a consequence, that kind of result. So it's you know, I guess a word from the wise, or to the wise, like, just don't take these allowances and licenses and just think that you are scot-free to enjoy. So that was important. And the part that I sort of want to comment, and my comments are invitational comments if you have anything to say, is first of all, there's a slight aside about how I view the modes of material nature. And there's two ways that I view. One is sort of hierarchical in that, like, there's the mode of goodness on top, and then it comes down to the mode of passion, down to the mode of ignorance. there is a second way I view the modes of material nature. It might be a little bit visualized as a pyramid where, or a triangle, where on the top you have the mode of goodness, and it's really kind of like a balance of the mode of ignorance and passion. If you go too far in the mode of passion, that's where you get destruction and the haste makes waste. Too far to the mode of ignorance, that's where you get the inertia, just the darkness. But there's sort of a healthy balance between the two, is sort of more goodness. So in that, I was just sort of contemplating that, you know, there is a purpose to these allowances. There is a positive, healthful purpose to these allowances, because like if someone does have a certain mode of nature, like there has to be regulation, but otherwise we start running into things like the Bhagavad Gita talks about, like, you know, the pretender, or when people repress, even worse things can come out.
Yeah.
And so that just came, you know, that came up for me when you were talking about that. Like there has to be, the understanding about all that.
Thanks for that. Yeah, there can be, we can look in terms of the hierarchy, and we look in terms of the modes as balanced, and just like, okay, just like sleep means tamas, sleep means ignorance. I mean, you know, like a very pure devotee, even their sleep is transcendental, but basically sleep means tamas. And then like, yeah, and like, and if we don't do enough of that, then our whole system goes out of whack. And that's why, like, yeah, especially those nighttime hours, right before midnight, to balance sleep. Actually, a few years ago, myself and Dr. Mauricio Garrido, also known as Murali Gopal Das, we published an article together about, it's called GLCA, the modes, the three gunas as described in the Vedas as a new model for understanding human decision making. And kind of like, I did like the social science part, he did like the mathematical part. He's a quantum physicist by training, that sort of thing. And we presented the modes in terms of balance rather than hierarchy. So there's definitely the validity there. And yeah, thanks for bringing that to the discussion. Krishna says in chapter 3, he says to Arjuna, yeah, what he said to Arjuna, don't be a mityachar, don't be a pretender. And what can repression accomplish? And so right, so like, you know, so for Arjuna, I'll go to the forest, I'll be a peaceful Brahmin. That would have been like false. It would have been repression. No, Arjuna, your nature is to be a warrior. Now, you know, so no, fight for highest principle, but don't run away from fighting in the name of, oh, I'm this peaceful like that. No, you're a warrior. So, you know, of course, don't be a pretender. What can repression accomplish? You know, there's a saying, no, nothing is so simple that it can't be misunderstood. So, so, you know, we can also misuse that, right? Like, oh yeah, so therefore, whatever whim I'm feeling, whatever my mind says, I don't want to repress it. I just want to go with that flow. Right, that. So, right. So it requires like sincerity and intelligence, you know, how to effectively balance these principles of discipline, and not being a pretender, and not going into unhealthy repression, and then the pressure cooker explodes, and there's certainly no spiritual gentleness there like that. I remember when I was summer of 1984, when I was kidnapped, and then as part of my kidnapping team, they had someone who previously was like in the temples and so-called practicing bhakti yoga, and even when they at at my rehabilitation center in Iowa City, I ran into two young ladies. I talked to by phone or some in person, and they would also formally, but all of them who were formerly, like, I'll put in quotes, practicing devotees, like this one fellow, I won't say his name, but yes, he was in the temple for 5 years, and he said all he would, because he was trying to show me how sincere he was, all he would eat was like 2 chapatis and a handful of rice every day, just so he was a serious devotee, like that. And then this, and I was like, yeah, I had just come from like the Israel Yatra. See, Mother Rukmini is here, and I was eating just these like mountains of plates of prasad every day. So I was like, what movement did you join? Like, I couldn't even relate to what he was talking about, But I was going along with the program to try to. I was successful to stay 2 or 3 psychological steps ahead of them, and so to trick them that I was seeing the light. And then one of the ladies, she was saying that before her guru would visit, she would chant japa while banging her head against the wall. Look, I'm not making this up. No, the point is, like, she was trying to show me she was really sincere. No, she really said that like that. So what I could see, even then I was Bhakti Dev, I didn't know much, but I could see, like, they were doing something that's like not Bhagavad Gita, like nowhere in Bhagavad Gita, bang your head again, no, like that. And so, like, yeah, they were on, I'll call it some false yogi trip, right? In some false yogi trip, being a pretender. And then obviously they were miserable. And this fellow who was part of the deprogramming team there, I was locked in a house, and well, it wasn't locked, but there were thugs who would block my way if I tried to leave. And so, but yeah, so he was part of the team, and he said that after 5 years, then, his parents hired some kidnappers. He said, and the first day he was kidnapped, then he saw the light, and he realized all he wanted to do was play his guitar and have a hamburger. So for me, it relates to what you're sharing, Gajendra, because I could, as a classic example of the because it's one thing, it's kind of like, I want to play my guitar. I want to see my girlfriend again. Okay. But then, like, if after a few hours, you want to have a hamburger, kind of like, you never got this, did you? Like, you were doing some other program for some other motivations. Like this never went very deep for you. So yes, yeah. So the chariot analogy there, we can pull the reins too tight because I'm a great austere devotee, and then we're not chanting and be happy. We're miserable. We're just trying to prove. At the same time, if we let the reins too loose, then the horses, the mind, the senses, then they drag us off a cliff. So thanks for bringing that to the discussion.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Anything else?
Wow, that last part was pretty painful there, thinking about the chanting, the head banging.
Yeah.
But then I immediately related to some kind of false yogi project.
Some kind of false yogi thing, yeah.
Whether to what extent I'm doing it now and have done it in Bhakti Yoga, or, what did I just say? I'm doing false yoga within Bhakti Yoga.
Yeah.
Or in, to look good in other places, like in college.
Yeah.
Right. So like in college, I was thinking, well, I didn't read the books, but I would look for the answers.
Yeah.
So I wasn't learning anything. I'm just answering the questions to try to get some grade.
Get the grade, right.
So I started Bhagavad Gita the same way. Of course, obviously, because that's all that I do.
It always got me by.
Yeah, so I literally, sign up for the Bhagavad Gita class, and then I get then it was just like, there was no juice there, so it wasn't going deep. It wasn't going deep.
Yeah.
It was interesting. So now I'm kind of shyly admitting I'm reading the Bhagavad Gita.
Nice.
after all these years, but wasted. Now I'm reading Bhagavad Gita, and it's like wonderful. And there's like continuity and like that.
I'm happy, I'm moved to hear that, glad to hear that.
So that's my personal reading at the moment. And yeah, it's a big shift, it's a big change. You know, it's kind of, I was doing cheating because it's just, I wasn't reading. So that's emotional, it's a big shift. And but where my mind also went in your class was just to kind of be curious and fascinated by the science of how the body and the atoms and the cells work. Because Krishna, Paramatma,
Yeah,
super soul in every atom.
that's the way it's translated. But I guess the way I said it was like, yeah, the super soul exists within every fundamental unit of matter,
So
whether you call it atom or whatever you call it.
so that's, the name's not important, but in a sense, that's what makes matter. Well, so sometimes you start talking about dead material matter stuff.
Yeah,
And then the body too, like to
Yeah.
make car analogy and driver analogy and the
Yeah.
soul animating.
yeah,
So this morning though, I was just kind of curiously redefining what that means.
Sure.
Krishna's there.
it's
It's
not
definitely
really,
not dead.
it's not really dead. That's true.
You know,
Yeah.
So Krishna's in every smallest molecule.
Yeah,
And then a cell, you know, is an eating and excreting organism, kind of independent,
hmm,
but then it has a role, a function, a job to play. And Krishna's in there, and my consciousness is passively directing it because it has
Yeah.
these functions, and it could be considered, it has a little lifespan. A cell has a lifespan and it does a function. And all the other living entities in the body too.
trillions and trillions. Yeah.
So it's just re-understand,
Yeah.
you know, new kind of fascination, understanding all that, how mechanism, how it works. So then when the cell dies,
Yeah,
it doesn't really die. It's like a transformation. Like it goes into like a different form of matter, which we would call, again, we could call dead energy. The cell's live, but it's
Yeah.
dead. Then it goes, transforms into some other, like even the excrement of the cell isn't dead because it's got molecule and Krishna is in it.
it's true.
So
It's true.
it's just
You're-
fascinating.
You're going deeper into it.
Yeah.
For the sake of communication,
Yeah.
we might say when the body dies.
Uh,
But, well, actually, the body, yeah, like, but when the cell died, means the spirit soul that was in it leaves. But you're right, the soul's made of atoms or fundamental units of matter, and the super soul is in every fundamental unit of matter. And so it's actually there is no death. But for the sake of communication, we need to use certain language sometimes.
yeah.
Maybe the proper language would be transformation.
Transformation. It's a transformation.
Transformation.
Yeah. I like that.
But the transformation only happened because the person is there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. So and then also through the class yesterday
Yeah.
and thinking about Krishna's desires, it's like is that basically is bhakti yoga, is like to understand Krishna means to get to know Krishna as bhakti yoga. Only through devotion and service would Krishna choose how
Yeah.
much to reveal himself.
Yeah.
And what does reveal himself mean? It means tell us what he likes, tell us what he does, that pastimes, you know, like, but then through pastimes, what am I learning? I'm learning about what he desires, how
Yeah.
he likes to play,
Yeah.
what he likes to eat.
Yeah. It could be revealing about our discussion 2 minutes ago. It could be revealing about what is material energy. It could be about, okay, let's go to a deeper layer. Like this whole discussion, it's because there's some sincerity. Krishna's revealing more and more
about his pastimes and about his material energy, because there's some sincerity here in the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, and Krishna desired the destruction of the Pandavas, the
Yadus.
Yadus,
The Yadus.
including the Pandavas.
Mhm.
The Pandavas continue. Yeah.
The Pandavas continue.
The Pandavas and Uddhava, they lived on.
Yeah, and some of Krishna's
yeah.
country went to
That's true. Yeah.
Bajraj.
Yeah. There were some who stayed in Dwarka and they didn't get destroyed.
Because they were eternal associates.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's described in the first canto. After Krishna disappeared, the Pandavas continued. They were very depressed, but like Yudhishthira, Arjuna, they continued. So, but
Because Maharaj Parikshit was still a baby,
still a baby. Yeah.
so they had to wait that he was capable of taking the kingdom.
Okay, yeah, this is more complex because Prabhupada says destroyed, and I'm thinking transformed, but I was, yeah. So now you're talking about what happens to the Pandavas because I wasn't clear, but that's a different discussion about where the Pandavas go and what happens.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a different.
You go to the Himalayas mountain.
Huh?
You go to the Himalayan mountain when Maharaj Parikshit is capable of taking the lead, and they retire to the Himalayan mountain.
I'm excited to get there.
First canto
We'll learn about
Bhagavatam.
this, yeah.
First canto.
Okay, I don't remember. Yeah, so yeah, Krishna's desires, and when we desire Krishna, then he comes running towards us. Yeah.
Yeah, he wants us. He wants us to want him more than we do. But he's really wanting it for us because that's he wants our true happiness. He really wants it.
I think that's the reciprocation and kind of tasting a little bit by reading, because then I'm desiring to learn actually,
Yeah.
right? Not just answer the questions, and I'm experiencing some reciprocation, some juice, so then it's like, like a reciprocation. So it's pretty amazing.
I'm personally very moved and inspired by your sharing, Bhakti Devin. Thank you. And that you're reading Bhagavad Gita with presence. And again, as I shared, probably my, I don't have much, but where I feel the most reciprocation with Krishna Prabhupada is in carefully reading all of Prabhupada's books. And if we only read Bhagavad Gita again and again,
It's complete.
it's complete and perfect. So I'm very glad you're doing that. Bhakti Kelly.
Thank you. I'm appreciating this recent discussion with Devin about reading the Bhagavad Gita and not really connecting, and it not really sinking in and just sort of doing the work, but not with joyful absorption.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm there where I'm reading, don't really want to, not really excited about it, and yet like understanding and the beauty of it, the richness of it, and how much truth there is that I would like to absorb. And it seems sometimes when I'm reading, like my mind goes somewhere else, and whatever I read just goes right through, and there's no absorption. And even if I am in the mood and I do want to read, sometimes it's still, I could read the same thing 3 or 4 times trying to get it to sink in, and it doesn't. And it's sort of at the end of his discussion, he mentioned that about Krishna, and you've mentioned many times, revealing information, like when it's time or when we're actually ready, not when we just want to be ready or say we're ready, but when we're actually ready. And I'm just curious more about, I hear his frustration, Devin, I hear your frustration about the time that seems, lost, where you were kind of reading, but not really getting it. And I'm wondering if it is more about, if there's more for us to learn or to experience or to discover about ourselves before we're able to absorb it, or if they're just blockages that we need to remove, or if we're just not really sincere. I'm just curious why, if we do read, we're not into it, and then one day we are. Or sometimes I'll hear the same thing. You'll say the same thing, David, Dhira Govinda, several times, and then somebody else might say it, or one day you say it again and I get it. But I've heard it, I just never really sunk in. So I'm just curious about all that.
Thank you, Bhakti and Kelly. I appreciate your curiosity and your expression. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. Yeah. Well, I don't see it as binary, like I absorb it or I don't absorb it. So like, okay, I'm reading through Bhagavatam cover to cover, and maybe it's 8th time, Bhagavad Gita, more than that, like that. So I can say each time I absorb more and more. And whether it's, like sometimes I'm reading Prabhupada's books for more than 40 years, chanting japa for 39 and a half years, but reading Prabhupada's books for before, a few years before I chanted japa. And sure, and like sometimes it's just like the words are they're just jumping out of the words are alive. Like this is a living book. This isn't like a book and everything's just alive. And sometimes it feels like trudging through mud. So when it feels like trudging through mud, maybe when Prabhupada wrote that, he was having a bad day. No. Actually, I read through all of Prabhupada's letters a few times, like the thousands of letters, and like Prabhupada never had an off day. Like he was but then according to my consciousness, that's why reading at any time is nectar. My soul sometimes is alive to it, sometimes not, but especially early morning, those sattvic hours. So that's why for me, reading, it's like I can say for sure, the more I read Prabhupada's books, the more opens up to me. Sometimes the experiences, and sometimes for me, the experiences are like forcing my mind. But I see it more in terms of like, I get it, I don't get, what's my experience? I mean, that's there, but it's more like, it's my service. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, like when I'm chanting japa, sometimes I feel like joy and ecstasy. And sometimes it's just like, that was mechanical, kind of like, I just chanted for 2 hours. Like I didn't think about Krishna once. Oh my God, like that. But it's my service, it's my service. And the more I do my service, even it could be said, like the Christians have the Catholics, the dark night of the soul principle, St. John of the Cross. But maybe when we're not feeling it and we do the service, maybe we're becoming even more dear to Krishna. Because like, well, even though you weren't feeling the joy, but you chanted my names. You chanted my names. Wow. So similarly, to read Prabhupada's books over and over again, that's my service. I can say the more I do the service, the more joyful I am. But it's not like I'm always joyful when doing it, but it's my service. And yeah, there's something I'll read a passage, Bhagavad Gita, that I've read maybe dozens of times. And I'll get something that, why didn't I get that in 1983 when I first read it? Why didn't I get that when I read it the 10th time a few years ago? Like that. And then, as you said, like, I think it's kind of all of the above, that I wasn't ready to receive it. And I know that there's some things just like, kind of like, I didn't care about that part of the philosophy. And it's like, but now it's just like, wow, I'm really interested in that. And then Krishna reveals something, even though I'm reading the same words, apparently. Or my anarthas, my lack of sincerity, my co-creation with Srila Prabhupada, kind of like all of the above. So those are some principles that come to heart.
Thank you for sharing your experience. It all resonates.
Thank you, Bhakti and Kelly.
There's a verse, you don't need to turn, but
Sure.
there's a verse in the Bhagavad Gita, maybe in chapter 3, where it said
Chapter 4, consummation. Yeah.
The consummation is absolute.
Yeah.
So if I'm present, if I'm not present, if I absorb, I don't absorb, with my chanting or any aspect of devotional service.
Yeah.
Like some people may go on the altar and bless deities, And I know I addressed deity every single day
Yeah,
for, like 2 years, I was every day.
right.
And there was some days where I was like, wow, I was with
Yeah.
the deities and it was so special. And there was some days where I would prefer being doing something else.
Yeah.
And I was still on the altar, bathing and dressing the deity. And yes, I would prefer to be absorbed because that's a more worshipful experience.
Yeah,
And at the same time, the consummation of any devotional service is absolute.
Yeah.
So even Bhaktadevan's reading of this Bhagavad Gita
yeah.
was like the
Looking for the answers.
cheating for prophecy
Yeah.
manifested. Well, it was absolute. It was absolute.
He gets transcendental credit for that.
Personal credit, there's purification, there is, the art openings, there is revelation,
Yeah,
everything is there. So
Yeah.
it is absolute. Devotional service is absolute.
Yeah.
And of course, we can make it that, okay, I know that, and then I'm going to kind of do my part to be present with it, to be
Yeah.
conscious with it.
Yeah.
And I'm always reading, like my mind is agitated by something else, or I'm thinking like, oh, I need to do that, I need to do that. I'm reading and then I'm like, Kelly, I need to read 3 times the same paragraph and I don't get anything out of that paragraph. And if I push through and I put effort in it,
yeah,
just that effort to read
Yeah.
it 3 times, 4 times, to just read it until I'm present with it, I know this is what Krishna sees.
yeah,
The love, he accepts the love. So if we push through, that pushing through is maybe even more relishable to Krishna than us sitting down and having a good time.
Mm.
That's what you were saying.
yeah, yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, it's my service. Let me push through. So maybe Bhaktadevan just trying to cheat and find the answer to the questions, but he's connecting with the absolute. So maybe because of that experience, your heart opened to have the experience you're having now in relation with Bhagavad Gita. Yeah, it's the love. There's the story of the South Indian Brahmin who was illiterate, but he was going through Bhagavad Gita and he was in tears. But the townsfolk were laughing. They were mocking him. They were laughing at him. And Lord Chaitanya saw and he was like, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well," he goes, "Well, I'm illiterate, but my spiritual master told me to read Bhagavad Gita every day. But I don't really understand anything. I'm illiterate." So Lord Chaitanya's like, "Well, okay, but how come you're crying?" And the South Indian Brahmin said, "Well, I see on the cover here, there's this painting of Krishna. Krishna, who's God, he's a supreme. And he's driving the chariot for his friend Arjuna. How much he loves Arjuna. And it just brings me to tears." So Lord Chaitanya says, you are the real knower of Bhagavad Gita. And because he was following the order of spiritual masters. So Krishna revealed the whole Kurukshetra pastime to him because he was just, I endeavor for that mentality. It's my service to read Prabhupada's books, all of his books over and over again. And I read it this, I understand this, I understand. And I endeavor for that consciousness. Thank you, Malini. And yeah, we have time for another comment. Gajendra Prabhu.
This is very quick, and I just want to say I appreciated what you and Malini were saying about the importance maybe sometimes of applying, just even if it doesn't feel good in the moment. But what I wanted to say, I don't know if it'll be helpful, but all glories of Bhagavad Gita, I've had unbelievable experiences, just couldn't even describe reading Bhagavad Gita. But quite frankly, sometimes I just don't want to read Bhagavad Gita. It could just feel like just so dry and burdensome. But it's really not about pushing through, because not far away is Krishna book.
Yeah.
And sometimes just, gosh, like Prabhupada wrote so much, so many, like sometimes you just got to pick the right book up.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Yeah. And again, it's a balance. There is a place for determination pushing through. And sometimes like
I'm not in the mood for right now. My reading, I'm on 8th Canto Bhagavatam, but like, right now, I'm going to read this chapter from Nectar of Devotion. That's why Prabhupada, it's all absolute, and at the same time, he gave us so much variety. I'm going to read Krishna book. Yeah, so sometimes it's like, okay, I'm not going to push through today. I'm more attracted to read this chapter in Krishna book, and that's equally absolute and transcendental. Thanks for that, Gajendra Prabhu. Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare